Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in, and if you've been here before, smash that like button on the way in. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And if you're not new to the channel, if you've been here before, you've seen this knife. I've made at least 2 videos on this. This is the TRM Neutron, the Neutron 2 rather, specifically with the lizard skin titanium scales. And you know what, the thing about this knife is that it is in fact not all that common, because this specific variant has the DLC coated blade. As far as I am aware, they have only released 1 drop of the DLC coated lizard skin titanium Neutron tubes. I have listened to feedback over time. You see, for the last 3 years, I've been doing lots and lots of knife reviews. I've done some different kinds of EDC videos, but ultimately what it comes down to is that people are starting to get tired of the hype videos where, you know, you unbox the knife and oh my God, it's the best thing ever. And it doesn't matter if it is. The moment you proclaim something as the best ever right after unboxing it, it's hard for true enthusiasts to take you seriously, because you haven't had the knife long enough to truly form a real accurate opinion. And this time I have. I bought this knife, I want to say it's been around 8 months, and I've had it long enough where I officially feel like it's time to release a long-term review. Long-term, guys. I've carried this for a while, and it's been one of my favorite pieces in my collection ever since I got it. I am enamored by the design language of this knife. The regular Neutron 2 is an amazing knife in its own right, and those go for somewhere in the realm of around 200 bucks. This specific one with the DLC coated blade is going to be running somewhere around, you know, $420. And people were adamant in my first review, oh, it's not worth it. I would rather have a $250 Wii or blah, blah, blah. Insert some random Chinese brand here. And you know, if that's you know, go ahead and put your licks in the comment section down below. But for everybody else, I'm about to tell you why that means absolutely nothing. You cannot compare an American-made knife to a Chinese-made knife when we start talking about the valuation of price. Things made in this country just cost more. The cost of labor is more, the cost of materials is more, the cost of manufacturing is more. We don't have a direct line on all of the machinery. We have to pay for it to get here. And then, you know, of course, once we do that, we have to pay our workers a living wage. And not a living wage in China, but a living wage here in the United States. Oftentimes people think of these things as just the material cost. Well, you know, you can get a blank bar of titanium for blah, blah, blah. And, you know, 20C, they pull it out of the ground just like all the other steels. If you have the opinion that the Neutron 2 is overpriced, chances are you probably don't know a whole lot about knives made in the United States or the machining process. It's way more than just the material composition itself. First of all, these are contoured titanium handle scales. And furthermore, they're not just contoured. These are 3D milled and texturized. They call this the lizard skin. Essentially, it's this diamond pattern that gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller all the way down to a point. Aside from it being contoured, which takes a specific type of milling machine, you'll notice that the edges are nicely milled over. That is perfection right there. I have an $800 knife, the Machine Wise Mojave. It doesn't have 3D milled contoured titanium handle scales. That knife goes for $800. Now, I'm not going to say that this knife is more precisely machined than that knife, but I am going to say the fact that you can get 3D milled contoured titanium scales on this knife for under $500 is insanity. I'm going to throw out some knives, some American-made knives that are very popular that many people have no problem buying that cost more than this. The Hinderer XM18 costs about the same. If you throw titanium scales on there that are slab style and not 3D contoured, you'll pay $675. The McNeese PM Mac 2 comes in at $550 plus, and that's for a basic slab style with almost no milling. You add in some milling and you start to get into the $600 range. The Oz Machine Company Roosevelt, also slab style. That one's going to be $800 plus minimum, even if you go on the secondary market. Slab style, no contouring, no 3D milling whatsoever. When you start talking about that, I don't understand why those knives are touted as worth it, but something like this at $425 is marked as overpriced. Overpriced? For what market? If this was made in China, yeah, it would cost $250 and it would still be an amazing knife, but it's made right here in the States. TRM, they're doing what we were asking them to do. We're asking for more American companies to come out with really good designs like this, and they did it at the most affordable price point. There is no other American-made knife with this material composition, with this level of machine work at this price tag. Not a single one. And if I'm wrong and you know of a company that's doing this for this price, I want you to tell me in the comment section down below. But it's got to be contoured and it's got to be 3D milled. So what's the big deal with the contouring? Yeah, we get it. It costs more to do because you have to do it more slowly. The machine's more expensive. But what's the big deal? Well, contoured titanium handle scales are the most comfortable format for a knife because the rounding that happens allows your hands to fit better. The more comfortable a knife is, the more likely you are to carry it, the more likely you are to carry it, the more likely you are to use it, and the more likely you are to use it, the more value it has. Aside from the price tag, which the people that just purely don't know any better will talk about. The other big gripe people had was the pocket clip. This is a stamped, bent titanium pocket clip, and it's got a gigantic amount of clearance. You could park an airplane underneath that, but it serves a purpose. You see, TRM, like many knife makers out there, they imagine that people are actually going to use this knife. With all this clearance, you have the ability to put this over any fabric you want. If you have thick material, Carhartts, this is going to slide over it like nobody's business. The irony to me is that, as a user knife, if you're looking at this purely as a user, save yourself $200, get a micarta or a G10 version, and it'll perform just as well as this one will. If you're an enthusiast, that's kind of where this comes into play. The enthusiasts love titanium. They love the machine work that goes into the 3D milling, especially on the lizard skin titanium scales that look absolutely gorgeous. But they put a big exclamation mark there with that pocket clip. That is an extremely useful pocket clip. It's got great retention. It slides in and out of the pocket with ease. It doesn't necessarily get in the way of the ergos. The big detractor here is that it's not the most gorgeous pocket clip in the world. Now, I have reached out to TRM in multiple occasions and I've said, is there a chance, is there a snowball's chance that you would ever come out with a milled pocket clip with this lizard skin titanium texture on it? And what I was told was, we may or may not be working on that. I'll say that again. They may or may not be working on that. The moment they do that, I'm buying one of those clips. I won't think twice. I'm just going to buy it and put it on here because I think that that's really the only thing that's missing on this knife. I would pay an extra, $50, $70, $100 for a 3D milled lizard skin titanium pocket clip. I think that would really set this off. Now, if you don't want to wait for that, you can in fact go over to Lynch Northwest. You can pick up one of their modular 3D milled titanium Benchmade clips, which will also fit this. The clip screw hole pattern is milled to basically fit that, and that's actually a very popular screw hole pattern. So it's not just Benchmade clips that will fit on here. There's actually plenty of different knives and manufacturers that make clips that will actually fit this. The Lynch Northwest is a good option because it's American made and it's 3D milled. So the big bonus with a 3D milled titanium pocket clip is that it actually increases the comfortability of the knife because you'd have less sticking out. It's more low profile. It would make this slicker, sleeker, and I think that it would also improve the already good looking aesthetics of the knife. Now, the scales themselves can be removed on this without actually taking apart the whole knife. That's really cool. TRM does sell different scales that can be added or taken off at will. You just remove these two T6 screws right here, which I'm not going to call body screws because they only screw into the liner and they don't in fact allow you to take the whole knife off. You don't even have to remove the pivot, guys. You just take off those 2 T6 screws, pop off the scales, and you can put on a set of G10 scales. You can put on a set of their carbon fiber scales. You can do that. You can change the scales at will. So what you're looking at essentially is a $200 knife with $200 3D milled contoured titanium scales. Now, you might be saying, well, $200 is a lot to ask for, you know, some titanium scales. Is it though? Is it though? If you were to look at the singular Hinderer XM18 titanium showside scale, that costs $200. If you get it with the horsehead milling, that's $250. If you go over to RG Custom Metalwork, who makes amazing contoured titanium scales for the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the Para 3, you'll spend over $400 on a set of those scales. And so yes, do I think that this is priced fairly? Absolutely. I think that many people will complain about the price tag because at the end of the day, they're just mad that it's more expensive than they want to pay, even if they absolutely love the design or they love the aesthetic. And this is one of the most beautiful knives that I own. Now, in my initial video, I mentioned that this was DLC, and it was questioned because this doesn't look like any other DLC out there. It doesn't quite look like the DLC we get on a Spyderco. It also doesn't quite look like the DLC that you get on something like a Kunwu. I'm not going to just ask you to take my word for it. I'll just go ahead and do a scratch test. This is my knife. This was not given to me. I paid over $400 for it. All right, so if we take a look there, you'll see those scratch marks. Now, if this is real DLC, that should wear off because I wouldn't have been able to scratch the blade. I would have rather just transferred the material from this Torx bit onto the DLC because DLC has a hardness factor over 80. I'm going to say that again. Real DLC will have a surface hardness over 80 Rockwell hardness. Something like this Torx bit will not. So if I was able to scratch the DLC, that would mean that this is not in fact real DLC. But if I go ahead and take my thumb here and I just do this a couple times and oh man, you know, I just scratched my $400 knife. No, I didn't. It's real DLC. There's a lot of channels out there who believe that real DLC will allow you to see the grind finish beneath the coating, and that's not necessarily true. It's sometimes true, it's sometimes not, but it's not a factor of what makes for real DLC. Real DLC, regardless of how it's applied or whether or not you can see the blade finish underneath the coating, essentially is just the coating of diamond-like carbon. That's it, guys. It's real DLC, and the company that TRM sent this knife out to have that done with did a really good job. This knife has held up beautifully. The edge has stayed nice and sharp. I haven't had to resharpen it. This has gone through boxes. This has gone through tape. It's gone through a lot. And you can't even tell that I've used it because the DLC just continues to hold up like a champ, like a freaking champ. Now, should you buy this? If you're someone that's ultimately impressed with the work that TRM does, but you want a more premium version of the knife, you don't have to buy this right away. You can buy a regular Neutron 2 and then you can buy the scales separately. That's pretty freaking cool. So if you are open to that, if you want to start off with the knife, go ahead and buy a $200 version of this. They go in stock a couple times a month. You can actually get in on them, and I post those knife drops on my members only Discord. But if you want to just go for it, they also sell these as the full kitted out version with the scales. And I'm going to say this again. This is the only time I've ever seen TRM do a DLC coated blade drop for this knife. Will they do it again? I have no idea. I don't know if they will or not, but I'm definitely going to be hanging on to this one. This one's my baby. I don't regret it. And you know what? If you think that this knife is overpriced, let me hear it in the comments section down below. If you wish that you'd gotten in on this drop when you saw it happen and you decided not to, let me know how you feel about it now. And if you want to watch some more awesome knife and EDC content, feel free to click on one of the videos that pops up next.